you have a friend on whom you think you can rely, you are a lucky man. If you found the reason to live on and not to die, you are a lucky man. Preachers and poets and scholars don't know it. Temples and statues and steeples won't show it. If you've got the secret, just try not to blow it. Stay a lucky man. A lucky man. If you found the meaning of the truth in this whole world, you are a lucky man. If knowledge hangs around your neck like pearls instead of chains, you are a lucky man. Takers and fakers and talkers won't tell ya. Teachers and preachers will just buy and sell ya. When no one can tempt you with heaven or hell, you be a lucky man. You are, if you are what you are, and that's a lucky man. Oh yeah, a lucky man. And that's a lucky man. A lucky man.
That's the voice of Alan Price singing the title tune to the great 1973 film directed by Lindsay Anderson called Oh Lucky Man, and a proper opening to tonight's edition of Take Two. If you have a copy of Oh Lucky Man or any of the films we'll be talking about tonight on the program, you are a lucky man or a lucky woman in the fact that you may have had your VCR on record at a opportune time. That's tonight's subject, unavailable films, and Bob and I are asking why are they unavailable. And that Bob I'm speaking of is my good friend across the aisle from me. It's Bob Whiteford.
And across the aisle from me, the undisputed czar of film on the Central Coast, a man I am proud to call friend. Of course, I'm talking about your friend and mine, Jim Dee. Well, here we go, Jimmy. I've been kind of chomping at the bit to do this one, the films that kind of fell through the cracks.
And I think we should say on the outset is we could have gone on to dozens of films that just have not seen the light of day, either a very sparse video release perhaps in the 1980s and then disappearing off the face of the earth. And then there are some films we're going to be talking about tonight that never were available on video or DVD. And we want to ask why. We're also, Bob, there's times when people write to us. In fact, you can write to us at movies@kcbx.org. We'll get in that address. Saying that they take notes during the show. They want to get a list of some of the films we've been talking about. And I would say that tonight's program is a good one to take notes on because
Absolutely.
Perhaps some of our listeners can get a hold of Turner Classic Movies, get a hold of Amazon.com or some of these outlets and impress upon them to request that these films come out. Because tonight we're going to be talking about couple of films directed by John Ford. We're going to be talking about two films starring Edward G. Robinson, a film later on with Paul Newman, a great film with Rod Taylor, and the film debut of Maggie Smith. Just a few, and those are not available for you to see.
And I guess, in a sense, Jim, we could go on about probably the legal problems. We could probably talk an hour alone about that. However, we're really concentrating just on films. We're film lovers, and we can't see these films. I'll tell you right now, I'm going to send an SOS out there to Radioland. I'm looking for a few movies. Home Sweet Homicide with Randolph Scott from 1946. I'm also looking for A Prize of Arms with Stanley Baker from 1962. If anybody out there has got a video copy of those that they recorded off a TV or something, and you trust me with it, I'd love to borrow it and watch these films. I've been chomping at the bit to see these movies for over 30 years. So there's my personal plea.
Well, you know, and Bob, you being the video specialist, let's put that out there. I think we should get some real basic things out there. The idea that if you saw a film when you were younger, you saw a film many years ago, does not mean it's available on video. If you saw it on a cable channel like Turner Classic Movies, does not mean it's available on video. And there have been films that have been released, but they go out of release, and they're not available to get. I mean, you can maybe look for something on eBay or something like that, but still, films go in and out of release.
Exactly. You know, Jim, here's an interesting little note. In the entire history of film, and I guess we have to exclude a lot of the silent films because, as we know now, a lot of the silent films just were destroyed because they were left alone. We talked about this in a past show, how over the course of time, the film just turned to dust.
Well, even earlier, they say, well, should I say later than that, they say half of the films made prior to 1950 are lost forever.
Right. And the thing is, with DVD, with video, and this revolution, quote unquote, has been with us for about 30 years now, even that, 80% of the films that have been made have never seen the light of day on video or DVD or Laserdisc or even Betamax. I mean, they've never shown up. Or if they have, case comes to point, John Frankenheimer's not so good 99 and 44/100th% Dead with Richard Harris and Edmund O'Brien and Chuck Connors. That was on video for about 5 seconds in 1981, and then it disappeared. Not that it's a great film, but I guarantee there's people out there chomping at the bit wanting to see this.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And it's just nowhere. It's not on cable television. And what we're seeing here is as time goes on, occasionally we're getting films that are showing up that we haven't seen in years, like Nightmare Alley with Tyrone Power. Thank goodness 20th Century Fox got on the shtick and got it released. But for every one like that, there's probably about 30 that are just gone by the wayside. What's happened to them?
And again, if they do release these, it's important that our listeners know that just because you do see a DVD version of a certain film, it does come out, and then once they sell all the copies, they don't necessarily make new ones. I mean, it's unlike, I'm trying to think about an analogy. When you go to a CD store, there's always the catalog of Beatles albums, right? They always have them in stock. Unlike some of the films we're talking about tonight, or some of even the great films that get released, once they sell out, hey, hard to find.
Well, we've talked about this before too, Jim, and people need to realize that if you're looking for one of these hard to find films and you get a release date on it, you better jump on it because, as you said, once the X amount of pressings are gone, that's it. They're probably not going to reissue it. And it's just going to be, you could buy it for $10 the day it comes out. 6 months later, it's out of print, and you're looking for a copy. Guess what? You're going to pay through the nose if you can find it.
Yeah, that is the one thing I've noticed, too, is if a lot of some of the films tonight I was looking for online, and the video for our first film we're going to talk about tonight, which was directed by John Ford, was released on video back in the 80s, and it is available for $50, and who knows what the quality of the tape is. I mean, I think tape does kind of deteriorate
Right.
over time. So, it's interesting how some of these things come and go so quickly, and maybe we can look forward to the releases. Hopefully this show will be outdated at some point where all the films we're talking about tonight will be available to movie watchers.
I hope so. In fact, Jim, let's kick it off with the film you were talking about, The Whole Town is Talking.
This is a wonderful film. It's sort of a comedy drama. It stars Edward G. Robinson, and he plays a dual role. And don't we all love films where somebody's playing a dual role? Again, John Ford sometimes linked to Westerns, but this is shall we say, an urban comedy drama with a good criminal element. And what is great about this film, Edward G. Robinson's two roles as one, a meek, mild-mannered writer who wouldn't hurt a flea, and another character he plays, Killer Mannion, who is just like your quintessential Edward G. Robinson gangster. In this film, he plays two roles. It's a fabulous film. It came out on video, I think, in the 1980s and disappeared ever since. Let's listen to a clip. This is both voices you're hearing are Edward G. Robinson, and in this clip, the gangster Edward G. Robinson is sort of holding his double hostage and sort of playing with him because he's wanted and he's just robbed a bank. In this scene, the gangster Edward G. Robinson is lying on a bed. He's taken a snooze, and the mild-mannered Edward G. Robinson comes up, picks up the gun that was on the nightstand, and actually gets a little bit of
Drop on him.
Gets a little bit of courage worked up and points the gun at him. This is Edward G. Robinson twice. He's doing both voices in The Whole Town's Talking.
Here's your gun, Mr. Mannion. You shouldn't leave it around like this. What'd you pick up this gun for? Why didn't you plug me when you had the chance? When you were asleep. You can't shoot somebody who's sleeping. Why not? I'd have done it if I'd have been in your place. I'll tell you why you didn't do it. You're afraid of me. You're afraid of me, asleep or awake. Yes, sir. Yeah. What's that? Who is it? Police. Oh, they don't know you're here. They're waiting for me. You? What for? They want to send me to prison, so I'll be out of the way. Oh, I see. Well, they told me I had no choice in the matter. I had to go whether I wanted to or not. Get over and wave to him. Hurry up! Tell him you'll be right down. I'll be right down. Hurry up and pack your grip. I don't want them dicks coming up here. Yes, sir.
That's a scene from the film The Whole Town's Talking with two Edward G. Robinson performances. And directed by John Ford. This one retrieved off of cable TV and just great seeing it. But we need to see this with a DVD release. It's a really great film.
Absolutely. And you wonder, Jim, I think you had a really good point earlier. This film's from 1935. That is now 72 years ago. What condition could the master be? Maybe not so good. So hopefully somebody gets on the ball fast and gets this film cleaned up, fixed up, and released.
The Whole Town's Talking, our first film that we would like to see resurrected with a DVD release, directed by John Ford. Let's move to our next film. And, we got to tell you, we had such fun dredging up some of these unknown and obscure titles, although they're not that obscure because we're talking about the star power, the directors in this next film, which was retitled Woman on Pier 13, but the original title was I Married a Communist with Robert Ryan.
Oh man, this came out. RKO released this film in 1949, and this is right around the time Howard Hughes really cemented his control over the studio. If you think back, 2 years before, they did a film called Crossfire. Dori Shari and Ed Dmytryk did that. And they also did a film called The Boy with Green Hair with Dean Stockwell and Pat O'Brien. So RKO, right after World War II, had a kind of a, how would you say it, a humanist message to their films. Because Crossfire, it's a hard-bitten noir, but it deals with anti-Semitism. And Robert Ryan was great in that as the killer. Here's the first film where the HUAC committee, the Red Scare has taken control of the studio. It's definitely under different ownership now. Though this film is very curious because it looks like a noir, it tastes like a noir, it has dialogue like a noir, it has noir stars. Robert Ryan. Oh, by the way, folks, he's the communist, which makes it Thomas Gomez, who is great in this, as some party hack chewing up the scenery. You might remember him from Force of Evil, which is a film he did the year before, 1948, with John Garfield. Great film. Also, Lorraine Day is in this. One of our all-time favorites, John Agar, is in it too. Very young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this film, the Communist Party, they're portrayed as gangsters and thugs and making you do the wrong thing.
It's strange. They're all mobsters. It's got William Talman as one of the killers, henchmen. And you might remember he played the district attorney in Perry Mason, but before Perry Mason, he had a career in film noir, going around being a murderer, basically a psychotic killer.
Yes.
You think of Ida Lupino's The Hitchhiker, where he torments Frank Lovejoy and Edmund O'Brien. He's in this, cutting his teeth, killing people. They're pleading for their lives, and he's taking great pleasure in killing them. And this is a real oddity. And what I find interesting now, Jim, is because film noir is red hot now. It's white hot. This is just the tip of the iceberg of films that haven't seen the light of day. I mean, the Film Noir Festival up in San Francisco, Eddie Muller, I don't know where he gets all the prints for these films, but he's pulling them out right and left. This is just, I think, just to mention I Married a Communist or Woman on Pier 13, we're also making a plea for tons of film noirs that aren't available to people. This is a fun movie. It's kind of warped, but it's 72 minutes of pure Robert Ryan fist and teeth clenching fun.
Here's a clip from I Married a Communist, also retitled as Woman on Pier 13. It's Thomas Gomez. The party he talks about is the Communist Party, and he's talking to Robert Ryan, who he has blackmailed.
Johnson, you'll see to it that no agreement is reached between your people and the Union.
Now, wait a minute.
There must be a complete tie-up of the waterfront by May the 18th. Therefore, beginning immediately, in public, you will accuse Travis and the Union of sabotaging negotiations. In private, you will inform Cornwall and the other owners that you recommend a reduction, not an increase in wages.
I couldn't get away with that, even if I was willing to try.
We'll tell you what to do. How you do it is your problem. You will insist to the owners that now is the time for a showdown. And if necessary, you will refuse to submit to the Union any compromise they propose.
If I pulled anything like that, I'd lose my job.
It's up to you to keep your job. Otherwise, you'll cease to have any value to the party, and the party will cease to have any reason for protecting you. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, of course, you don't have to obey my orders because I can't check up on you. Well, I don't need to check up on you. The party judges by results. If the waterfront is still open on May the 18th, you'll be held responsible. And the following day, you'll be under arrest for murder. He could have killed you just as easily, but the party doesn't want you killed. Go home, Johnson, and start your assignment first thing in the morning.
Well, there you have it. I mean, they're so dedicated to their cause that when Robert Ryan charges Thomas Gomez, the henchmen have their orders. They don't even shoot to kill. They'll shoot just to make the point that he could be shot. It's kind of ridiculous, sure, but it's a lot of weird fun, and it's got great San Francisco scenery. It reminds me a lot of an RKO film called Born to Be Bad, which is another one that is disappeared. And that's with Joan Fontaine, Robert Ryan, Mel Ferrer doing a nice turn as a gay painter. And it's kind of, I often put the films together because of the San Francisco locales, and they share the same players or a lot of the same actors, and they visually look a lot alike. But I Married a Communist. It's a real hoot. Come on, whoever's got the rights to this, release it, will you please? And give me an extended version. And give me the Dupe of Moscow version.
So our next request to get the DVD light of day, I Married a Communist, or retitled as Woman on Pier 13. Okay, let's move on again. We've got another film with Edward G. Robinson, and Bob, you were talking about watching this film. I mean, I watched The Whole Town's Talking when I was a kid on the $1 Million Movie. It would show up every night, and here's another one that I want to thank you for turning me on to, another Edward G. Robinson film from 1948 called Night Has 1,000 Eyes. I watched this a couple nights ago, and I think, now with the interest in psychic detectives and psychic phenomena, this goes back to 1948, and it has kind of a film noir feel about it because Edward G. Robinson has a gift of seeing the future, and it's not quite a gift. I mean, there's a narration that occurs during the film where it's much more of a burden to him than it is a gift. But what a wonderful movie from 1948, and Edward G. Robinson is a convincing, of course he always does great work, but as this reluctant psychic.
This film is so much fun. It's got, as you said, it's elements of a film noir. It's a little bit like a horror movie. It's kind of like a psychic thriller.
It's got a theremin in the soundtrack.
Exactly. It's one of the first films to have a theremin. It's got a classic star, Edward G. Robinson. It's got Gail Russell. You might remember her, folks, from The Uninvited with Ray Milland. This is a Paramount film, incidentally. Brad Gray, he's the president of Paramount. Hey, Brad, how about getting this out on DVD? We'd really like to see this. It's got John Lund. You might remember him from Billy Wilder's classic A Foreign Affair. You know, he's one of those 1940s mustache guys, not unlike John Carroll or Lee Bowman, or, of course, the biggest mustache of them all, Errol Flynn, or David Niven. One of the mustache guys. It's got William Demarest as a Flatfoot. And it's a really, I just enjoyed this film so much. I just wish it gives you 88 minutes of pure entertainment.
Yes.
And the scenes inside the Chinese restaurant, what a kooky Chinese restaurant. I only wish we had one that nutty.
This is a scene from Night Has 1,000 Eyes, starring Edward G. Robinson as a reluctant psychic, and he is warning some friends of his about a possible plane crash. This is from Night Has 1,000 Eyes.
I told you to wait outside. This is important. Miss Cortland, I'm an old friend of your father's, and I have an urgent message for him.
I'm sorry, he's not here.
Yes, I know, but I must reach him at once.
I'm afraid that's impossible. He's flying from New York.
Non-stop?
Why, no, one stop in Wichita for fuel.
Well, then, please call there. Leave a message for him to halt the flight.
Halt the flight? He'd laugh at me.
Well, not if you say the message comes from John Triton.
John Triton? But Dad told me John Triton was dead.
No, he's not dead.
Who's John Triton?
He was Dad's best friend.
I'd advise you to call there.
Why should Mr. Cortland stop his flight?
Because if he doesn't, the plane will crash.
And just how do you know that?
Does it matter? Is it too late to reach him?
No, I suppose not, but
Well, then please call.
what do you think, Elliot?
I think it's a lot of nonsense. But, well, what can you lose? Except $3 on the phone bill.
Well, all right.
What do you think, Elliot?
That's a scene from Night Has a Thousand Eyes, a film that has never been out on video or DVD. Bob and I really like this film. In fact, I really liked about this film, Bob, is Edward G. Robinson considering his power, his ability to see the future as a burden, and when he tries to avert it, I'm not going to give anything away here too much because, maybe our listeners won't be able to find this film, but hopefully they will. But he looks at a paperboy and realizes that he's going to get hit by a car, and he actually tells the paperboy to go a different way.
And he still gets killed.
And it still happens, and then he starts wondering, oh my gosh, am I making these things happen by knowing about them? It really has a very interesting twist on the whole psychic phenomenon.
Because his partner, who's his friend in his vaudeville act early in the film, he's helping his partner get wealthy by winning horse races, by doing investments. But he's not cashing in himself at all. He's very troubled by what he's going through. He's really torn by the experience. It costs him a close friendship. It costs him the woman he loves.
Yes.
He pays a heavy price for this, which is really interesting. And he only comes back years later to save someone, the child of the woman he loves. And this is a wonderful film. It really is. And folks, if you ever get a shot at seeing Night Has a Thousand Eyes, whether it's, well, I don't know how you would see it, but if you ever do get an opportunity, check it out. If you liked The Uninvited with Ray Milland and Ruth Hussey and Alan Napier and what's her name? Gail. Oh, she's in this one. I just mentioned her name. I can't remember her name now. Oh, brother.
It's okay.
It's been a long day.
Anyway, Bob and I highly recommend Night Has a Thousand Eyes, and we impress upon whoever the distributor is, let's get this out on DVD.
Please get it out. Please.
You're in tune with the movie program. It's Take Two on Public Radio, KCBX San Luis Obispo, KSBX Santa Barbara. We're streaming at kcbx.org, and you can write to us at movies@kcbx.org. Bob and I taking a break over to the concession stand. More Unavailable Movies in a moment.
I wanna go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. On to the movie show. Let's go. I buy the popcorn as soon as we hit the door. My two brothers, Bell and Puns, sitting in the front row. They bought the candy. We don't need nothing more. I love a movie show, I tell you, in black and white. I don't care what it is. I don't care how small the theater is. I don't care who's playing.
Funds for Take Two have been provided in part by Morin Brothers Automotive, which is newly expanded to better serve their customers. Frida, the diagnostic dog, invites you to check out her new digs at Morin Brothers, servicing Volvo, Saab, and most domestic and Japanese cars.
Also, funds for this program have been provided in part by Chaucer's Bookstore in Santa Barbara, offering books for readers of any age in a multitude of subjects and interests. Their number is 682-6787.
I wanna go to the movie show, me and my baby. Come on, let's go. Morgan Freeman and Edward G. Man, James Earl Jones and Dorothy Malone. I love the movies out there. Take my baby everywhere.
We're back on Take Two, the movie program on Public Radio KCBX, broadcasting from San Luis Obispo, California. My name is Jim Dee. I'm here with my good friend Bob Whiteford, and we're talking about obscure and unavailable films that made an impact on us, and we're pleading with the distributors to make at least our list of films from tonight's show available. We also know that there are many, many other films that have yet to see the light of day of video, or if they had a very sparse release, perhaps back in the 1980s, oh boy, there's a lot of re-releasing that we think should be done. And our next film comes from 1967. This one's a lot of fun. It is called Saul Madrid, with a cast of thousands.
Oh, my goodness. This thing is just, what a riot. A friend of mine, he was a captain in the Army. He used to come by the store, and one time he dropped this off for me to watch. And I hope he's okay. I haven't seen him in years. I guess we know where he is now, unfortunately. Oh. But this is a load of fun. I got to tell you, this is the film. In 67, the big studios were coming out with these big anti-drug films. There's a film that comes to mind called The Opium Connection. It had Omar Sharif, it had Yul Brynner, Rita Hayworth. I think Orson Welles was in it for about 15 seconds. Loaded with stars. This is the other one. This is the Hollywood version. This is MGM. This was directed by a fellow named Brian G. Hutton, who went on to do Where Eagles Dare. And I think this was the film where, basically he cut his teeth for Metro, and he said, you know what, the kid's all right. Give him that Burton Eastwood war picture. And this film is it's an oddity. It's a lot of fun, but it's really strange. You've got David McCallum, fresh off The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, this would be when he was Ilya Kuryakin in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and hitting it big, because that was a big TV show.
Oh, yeah, exactly. He was a big star at this time, and it's easy to forget now, but he was a big star at this time.
I like David.
I was more of a Robert Vaughn man myself. I like Napoleon Solo, because Ilya was a Russian. You can't trust them. They're all communists. But anyhow, I digress. The movie starts off with McCallum scoring some H on the Lower East Side to some nutty jazz music. You find out then that he's an undercover Interpol narcotics officer. Mm-hmm. And you're just going, oh, man, okay, I get it. And, of course, because he doesn't look like a narc, hint, hint, his long blonde hair and his nutty turtleneck, I guess he's not a cop, right? So they bring him out to the West Coast to take down this mafiosi played by Rip Torn. I bet you were out there thinking I was going to say Rip Taylor, didn't you? No, Rip Torn, who we love. He's great, but I can't see him as a mafioso. But anyhow, they go to Mexico to try and stop the heroin operation. It's kind of like a seminal war on drugs film. I think you're getting the drift here.
But it's a big production.
It's a huge production, because as soon as he goes to Mexico, he's got Stella Stevens in tow, eye candy. And when he gets down there, he's got the Mexican cops, Michael Ansara, and who, let's face it, the man who lives to love and loves to live. Of course, I'm talking about Ricardo Montalban. He's one of my all-time favorites, and he is so wonderfully over the top in this picture. It it fills my heart with joy. But wait, it gets better.
Go.
I got to go with this.
Keep going.
Pat Hingle's in this as Rip Torn's money man who splits, and he goes down south of the border to make a deal with a cat named Dietrich, who's the H train. He's the supplier of all the heroin, and he is portrayed by Telly Savalas. And I got to tell you, people who listen to the show know I love Telly Savalas. I have never loved him more than I did in this film.
And we need to say the title. It's called Sol Madrid. The first word, S-O-L, Madrid. Lost.
And
until
it's
we're resurrecting it now.
Saul Madrid.
Saul Madrid.
Like Saul Greenberg. It's Saul Madrid. There's a lot of double entrees on the name. A lot of jokes on the name for obvious reasons. I don't know. It's the craziest name for a movie I've ever heard. And Savalas is so wonderful in this. He's out of control, chewing up scenery. He's either flying off the handle or he's playing the effete, almost Blofeld like a Bond villain. He's almost like he was auditioning for On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And this film, it's filled with hackneyed cliches, and I really enjoy this to no end. Where is it? Come on, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or should I say Sony, you own them now. Get this out. Come on.
Sol Madrid, and made in 1967. And Bob, this has never seen the light of day, not even video, not even DVD.
None.
Oh, boy. Well, we have a clip from Sol Madrid, and here is the cool undercover cop Ricardo Montalban talking to David McCallum down in Mexico.
Buenos días, amigo. ¿Cómo estás, eh?
Okay. I have a charter flight for Tijuana first thing in the morning, right after I make the pickup.
Fine, now you can have something to eat. I can highly recommend the ceviche.
Not for me. Café con leche.
Café con leche. That's for a secretary on a diet or one of those businessmen with ulcers. You don't take time to live, amigo. You're a young man. These are precious years. Don't waste them. Don't waste them.
You're one to talk. You can't be getting much fun out of this job of yours.
Nah, this job has one great advantage. Undercover work gets me extra pay. And there is a good retirement plan.
Some hood's liable to retire you any minute.
You know what I'm going to do when I retire? In 5 years, mind you. Just 5 years. I am going to take my wife, my children, down to Puerto Vallarta and live on the beach. The simple things in life, amigo. Most beautiful.
The scene from Sol Madrid and Ricardo Montalban perhaps being over the top because he's just so cool. He's the coolest undercover cop who's dabbling in the crime down in Mexico. And, he's thinking more about retiring in 5 years and spending time with his wife and kids.
Everybody's kind of a little over the top in this film. And that's what I kind of like about it, Jim. David McCallum, he's overacting a little bit. You heard Ricardo Montalban having some fun. Rip Torn has some great moments in this as well. And, of course, the aforementioned Telly Savalas. And Pat Hingle has a moment or two as well. It's just really fun seeing all these great actors in this kind of oddball film. And it just, for me, it makes movies fun. I don't know why. This is about drugs. There's people getting killed. But yet I'm getting a weird kick out of this film. And I was completely sober when I saw it the last time.
Bob's and my next request for a DVD release, Sol Madrid from 1967. Now, this next one, Bob, is a crime in the fact that this has never seen the light of day, either on video, DVD, here in the States. And, one thing that we don't do enough of here on the program is talk about foreign language films, mainly because we like to play clips, and playing clips in foreign languages might be a little bit tough. But this particular film from 1970 has star power, European star power. The ultimate. We've got Alain Delon. We've got Jean Gabin. We've got a wonderful, I guess it's a French-Italian production of a film that's just so much fun, and it's never been released.
This is...
Oh, the film is The Sicilian Clan.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We forgot to mention it.
The title.
Alain Delon and Jean Gabin, two of the greatest movie stars of all time, did several crime films together. They did a film called Any Number Can Play in 1962, great heist film. They did a film in 1973 called Two Men in Town. That's Gabin near the end of his career and his life, which is also a great crime film. Sandwiched in between is The Sicilian Clan. And this is one of the great crime films. I would put it right up there with Rififi, with Grisby, all the great stuff coming out of Europe. And what's going on here? I mean, it's beautifully photographed. It's a huge budget film. It's got Lino Ventura in it as well, from Army of Shadows. And he's great as the detective that's after these criminals. And all I want to know is, where is this film? Why is it we can't see it? The only version of this film I've ever seen is taken from a Japanese Laserdisc, dubbed into English with Japanese subtitles.
Yes.
It's absurd. This film should be shown, it should be re-released in its original language, in the letterbox, cleaned up. This is a great crime film, European style, and they do it well. And this is no exception.
And one claim to fame for The Sicilian Clan is it's got great theme music by Ennio Morricone, who probably by this time, he was interviewed. How many movie soundtracks have you done? He goes between 200 and 300. By this time, probably between 300 and 400. But instead of playing you some of the dubbed version of The Sicilian Clan, which we got a copy of, we'll play a little bit of the wonderful Ennio Morricone music from The Sicilian Clan.
Sorte. Così.
That trademark music by Ennio Morricone, that's the theme from The Sicilian Clan. Bob and I highly recommending to whoever owns the rights to release this film on DVD. It's a lost treasure. Okay, we're going to move to 1968 and maybe doubling back to our opening theme music from the film Oh Lucky Man, which is actually the second in a trilogy of films that began in 1968 with the film If, Oh Lucky Man in 1973. The third one I'm not too worried about, called Britannia Hospital. But boy, the fact that If is not available is very sad. This is a wonderfully surreal and provocative film. But again, the fact that it's provocative, it could be linked to real life events. I'll just put in parentheses here the name Columbine. But still, to compare the film If to what happened at Columbine is not doing it justice. We're really talking about two different things. If is about a very oppressive boys' school in England, and sort of what naturally happens when people are oppressed. In fact, very interesting about If, Lindsay Anderson, who directed it, called Malcolm McDowell, and we're talking about pre-Clockwork Orange Malcolm McDowell. In fact, it was probably this film that got him the role in Clockwork Orange. But Lindsay Anderson talks about, shall we call, the revolutionaries in this film, the ones who sort of rebel against this very oppressive boys' school. They're not really revolutionaries. It's just sort of a natural reflex to oppression. And it's really a wonderful film. Bob, I went to see this a number of times when it was in the movie theater here in San Luis Obispo, and the film goes from black and white to color. There's a bunch of little side stories and characters, but it's just an amazing film. It brings up a lot of interesting questions, and I went back to see it. I tried to make sense of the color to black and white. It never does, but that's the beauty of the film. So again, in our requests, in our hope that If, Oh Lucky Man, and Britannia Hospital will be released on video or DVD, preferably, they're nowhere to be found at the moment, and would really like to get these out. We do have a clip from If. This is a Malcolm McDowell and his two senior cohorts who are in the senior room. They're drinking vodka, and they are getting caught by one of the whips who are about the same age as they are. This is a clip from If.
Isn't she beautiful?
Hello, sweetheart. There's only one thing you can do with a girl like this. Walk naked into the sea together as the sun sets. Make love once. Then die.
Fantastic.
What makes me nervous about girls is you never know what they're thinking.
No, I don't think they do think.
Hey, quick!
You've been drinking alcohol.
No, we haven't.
Where's the bottle? What bottle? Breathe. Stand up when a whip's in your study. Get your hands out of your pockets. Your hair's too long, all of you. You'll have a 2-minute cold shower tomorrow morning. What in hell are those?
They're my teeth. They're my good luck.
There's still blood on them. They're a breeding ground for bacteria. I'm confiscating them. You're a degenerate, Travis.
That's a scene from the Lindsay Anderson directed film If from 1968, really not available on video. And again, the key here is to see If and Oh Lucky Man as a double feature, pretty much. The character of Travis, portrayed by Malcolm McDowell in If, goes on to become a coffee taster and salesman in Oh Lucky Man, and goes on an incredible odyssey. But two films that really deserve to be released and out on DVD, If and Oh Lucky Man, directed by Lindsay Anderson.
Which brings us to our next film.
Yes.
Now, this film is interesting. It came out in 1965, released by MGM, called Young Cassidy. And it stars Rod Taylor, and as you mentioned earlier, Jim, the introduction of Maggie Smith, her first film.
Very young. Looks like she's in her early 20s.
And a very young Julie Christie, and a whole slew of wonderful character actors. This film was shot in Ireland, on location. It's tragic, it's romantic, it's beautiful to look at. I'm often reminded of David Lean's Ryan's Daughter, or John Wayne and John Ford's Quiet Man, how they use the Irish landscape. And it's so beautiful, and it fits the story so well. And what's interesting about this film is it was directed by John Ford.
For a while.
Apparently, they pulled. I don't know if it was a creative difference or something happened.
I think his health was not too
failed.
good. So,
and it was finished by someone else who I can't remember who it is. now.
Jack Cardiff, I think,
Okay.
who was the cinematographer,
Right.
took over the directing.
Good show. He did Girl on a Motorcycle with Marianne Faithfull and Alan Delon. Jack Cardiff was a fine filmmaker in his own right. Good show, Jimmy. Thank you. But this is one of the movies that made me fall in love with movies, Jim. And it's of course takes place in the early 20th century, Ireland, very turbulent, fighting British rule, poverty, and it again, it's that juxtaposition of romantic heroism, hopeless heroism, tragedy around every corner. I fell in love with movies watching this as a young boy, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was all about, except Julie Christie. Woo-hoo, she looked good.
Yes, there's really quite an erotic scene with scenes with Rod Taylor and Julie Christie.
Yeah, I mean, she's not in the film that long, but boy, she makes an impression. This is a wonderful film. I mean, schoolboy fantasies aside, to see it as an older man now and to look at it, this is marvelous. This is a wonderful film. Why isn't this available?
We're talking about Young Cassidy, starring Rod Taylor and Maggie Smith, Julie Christie. It's never been available on video or DVD. And what's interesting too about the Rod Taylor character is he is a rough and tumble guy in the pub and dealing with the oppression of the Brits and everything, but he's also somewhat of an intellectual, and he strikes up sort of a flirtation with a very young Maggie Smith at a bookstore, and he's ready to get into the fight, but he's also a thinking Irishman
and a romantic. And what I like about this, Jim, is he's a working class guy, and yet he has people in the upper classes, the educated classes, that really appreciate his voice. And we got to play this bit because this is a great piece.
This is Rod Taylor and Maggie Smith in her screen debut in the film Young Cassidy. They've been kind of flirting with each other, and now here they're just sort of sitting down and talking with each other. From Young Cassidy.
How's did you have time just to sit around?
I'm not working.
When I first met you, I thought you had more talent than to go around chasing girls.
Well, I was chasing after you. As for the rest, I write. I'll try to.
You're right. What?
I've had a book published. There are other things, too.
Oh, that'll not get you far. You need a high education to be a writer. Oh, I am sorry. I didn't mean that.
Oh, you meant it, Nora. It's a common thought. A high education, as you call it, is a grand thing. But just you wait. There are things going to be written in this country by brutal, drunken working men like me. It'll be very, very disturbing, Nora.
That's from Young Cassidy. Rod Taylor, great character in this film.
He's great in this.
And Maggie Smith, probably barely out of her teens in this film in her screen debut. And boy, I was watching parts of this, Bob, and I need to go back and watch the whole film. It's it struck me as I was watching it and getting the clips from it.
It's a wonderful film.
Young Cassidy. Well, I think we have time for one more. Here's a very curious film from 1970. Again, never seen video or the light of day DVD. And it stars Paul Newman, Joanne Woodward, Cloris Leachman's in there.
Anthony Perkins.
Yes.
Oh, Pat Hingle's in this one, too.
And this film, really a curious film as far as the role that Paul Newman plays, but it comes from 1970. It's called WUSA. And very timely in the fact that WUSA could be, Fox News.
Exactly. It almost predicts the coming of the Fox phenomenon, for better word, Clear Channel, the big right-wing message-oriented media. In 1970, it seemed like you could kind of laugh this off as some kind of strange, an anomaly.
Well, you think of 1970, if you can go back to then, where the evening news was a half hour with either Walter Cronkite or
Huntley and Brinkley.
And, you didn't have the 24-hour news channels. And it seems like news was pretty, stuck to the facts, that sort of thing. Whereas this film introduces the idea of news putting forth, a certain point of view.
And let's say it's a right-wing point of view. And what's interesting about this film, Jim, is the characters in this film play against type.
Yes.
Newman is jaded, no surprise.
He's a real cynic in this.
Very cynical. His cynicism is we were talking about this before we went on the air. When the critical point is reached, you think he's going to make the change. He's going to become the hero, Paul Newman, and he doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
He stays on the cynical train with disastrous results for everyone around him.
Which is very, very interesting.
Yes, this is a very peculiar film. It's got Lawrence Harvey as some phony priest.
That's right, Lawrence
Harvey. And it takes place in New Orleans, too, which is interesting, too, from a historical point of view. This is a very odd film. Way ahead of its time, so far ahead of its time that I don't think people could handle it.
Here's a clip from WUSA. Here's Paul Newman applying for a job at the very conservative station.
You must be Reinhardt.
What can you do for us, Mr. Reinhardt?
Well, I usually work in a musical format, but I can work the news and I can edit wire copy. I do pitches.
It's a powerful package.
I used to work the small stations, and you get to keep your hand in.
Mm-hmm. But we're not a small station.
No.
You see, the difference between us and other stations is we know what we want to do. Most of them don't, but we know pretty much exactly.
You mean it's not amateur night?
Yes. Yes, that's very well put. You see, we have a situation right now where we're ready to bring someone in off the streets and let him show us what he can do. I mean, we'll listen, but we can't provide a lot of time, sympathetic understanding.
What do you want to listen to?
Well, no, why don't you take 5 minutes of news off the ticks and we'll tape it. We might have something to talk about.
Let's go do it.
Mr. Reinhardt, we have a point of view here at WUSA. Do you know about our point of view?
Yeah, I know about your point of view.
It's Paul Newman from WUSA, just another film that has never seen the light of day of either video or DVD, and Bob and I would love to see it released. I want to thank you for listening to Take Two, the movie program on Public Radio KCBX. Hope you kept track of some of the titles of some of these obscure and unavailable films. We know there's lots more, but make an impression upon a distributor or Amazon.com, or perhaps even going on to Turner Classic Movies and ask for these films to get released.
This has been a real blast, folks. Thanks for having us in your living room, in your car, or maybe on your computer. It's always an honor. We'll catch you next week here on Take Two.